Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Welcome also to part 1 of book 3 of Copper Coins. It's our last book in the series. Yo! No, I'm so excited for this. This has been a very fun series. Like, it's gone so fast. I probably because we've been doing longer series where it's like 5 books, 6 books, all that. Sorry, it's a little low. I was recording something for next week. Um, there we go. Nope, now it's a little high. This is why I don't like messing with this. It's always good enough. But yes, hello Cookielicious and hello Ruby. I am doing very good. I was a bit sleepy today, but like I got a little something to help perk me up so I'm not like snoozing on you. But no, I got some good stuff done today. I've got some friends to share. We've got our blind box to do. We're starting our book. So I'm doing pretty good. How are you both? I feel like it's a good day. I'm ready for the weekend. Not that I have any crazy plans, but like there's something special about the weekend. But yes. Anyway, Copper Coins Book 3, Part 1. Just woke up and feel pretty refreshed. Very nice. That's always good. Well, what a great way to wake up, right? Wake up and you get a story right first thing in the morning. I'd say that's pretty good. But yes, this is a chill stream. Now, what that means is I will be talking to myself, be talking to my lovely book garden. I might occasionally look something up in the book. I will be making comments throughout. Um, and sometimes I might look up like a picture or something if they're describing something and I'm not 100% sure, or think it would just be really cool for everybody to see what it is. That's sometimes not someone's vibe. They just want to hear the story, and that's totally okay, but maybe stick around. You might find you enjoy it. It's a pretty chill, pretty fun community here, and everyone's super nice. So, you never know. But if you still decide it's not really your thing, that's more than okay. But yeah. Hello, Annika. Welcome. How are you doing? Since 30 minutes ago when I talked to you. Still doing good? I hope. But yes. This is also a mature stream, so it's 17 plus. What that means is there is potentially violence, gore, sexy times. Usually I might self-edit about the sexy times just because this is YouTube. But there are triggering things in a lot of these books. It's very common in Danmei. If there are triggering things that happen, if you're here during the live, there's only so much I can do. Usually I can see if something's coming and give a little bit of a hey heads up. But there's only, as I said, so much I can do. If you're here during the live and things start getting hairy and you think it might affect you, it is more than okay to come back later once the stream is done and once I have had a chance to potentially put a disclaimer in the title, a short, less descriptive description in the description, and to timestamp where such things that might be a trigger warning occur at the start and finish. So yes. If you're here later, there will be all of those things if there's something that I think is triggering. If there's nothing there in the title, usually it's pretty good to go. If I miss something that you think should be marked, please just leave me a comment on the video and I will go back and timestamp it, mark it in the title. But yeah, like we want everyone to have a good time here while we're listening. We're here for fun to do this. So yeah, take care of yourself. Do what you got to do and enjoy. I am not sponsored. I do this because I can, because I want to, because I want to get these books out there, and I like sharing it with a community of people in this way. I don't make anything from this. I'm not endorsing anything through this. If I show anything, it's just because I was usually like at a con and I was like, this is so cool. But yes, hello, Truffle. And that sounds really cool, Annika. You're gonna have to like maybe post that in the community so I can look at that later. I still have not figured out how to share my screen without like having us go into the matrix. But I will definitely look at that later if you share. I am not a fluent speaker. I do my best, but you will notice, especially when I am saying names and places, that there might be some stuttering. I feel like I've been getting better about pronouncing things, but there might be some slip ups. If I'm egregiously murdering some word or sound, please let me know so I can fix it. Please be kind about it. I am doing my best. Thank you. I was actually just about to get to my bedazzled snakes. So, as some of you know, I was working on a Zuzzy Lang cosplay from Scum Villain, and he is a snake demon, and he has many snake friends. I will be going to a convention next month, and I unfortunately lost my first snake that I made, who I lovingly dubbed Peach. So I ended up ordering some more wooden figures and am now making new snake friends. So let me introduce you to my snake friends. So this is Peach Jr. She is very fabulous. She's a diva. And then this is Tangerine. They are a sweetheart. They are a sand snake. Peach Jr. is a garter snake. But yes, Tangerine is a non-venomous sand snake. But yes. I am having a lot of fun bedazzling these. So if anyone has snake suggestions for patterning and such, I would love that and probably will make it. But yes, I will be going for a day to Fan Expo. And just kind of checking it out. I could definitely do a coral snake. I'll write that down. But yeah. I have a friend who's helping vend at that one, so I thought I could go say hi, and the ticket price for a single day wasn't terrible. So I decided, might as well go out, be stylish, check out what's there. It seems like it's kind of more sci-fi, old school comic books but I could be wrong. That just kind of is the vibe I'm getting from the guest appearances and what's being highlighted. But hey, you never know. It might surprise me. So it's in a town called Rosemont. They have a lot of entertainment stuff. If you fly a lot, it's over kind of by O'Hare Airport in Illinois, kind of O'Hare Chicago Airport. But yeah. I thought about Anime Magic, but I don't know what the price is for Anime Magic. Maybe. I think I have something going on that weekend though. So even if it's the week after, it's okay. No. All right. So So since I was on a bedazzling kick, I also bedazzled this fan, which I think turned out super cool. I appreciate the fact that it's also a charter, so this is gonna definitely be a con buddy. Um, but yes, I tried to make it kinda look like bamboo at the bottom, but it kinda looks more like an aux board, but that's okay. It's still stylish, has a flashlight if I need it, which I don't think I will, but, like, it's fabulous, and I love it. Yes. Very much matches the green vibe. So, it's my fancy fan. Yes. Haven't been to a con because there are none in my country. Cons sound so fun. They very much so are. Like, I've literally been going to cons since high school. Um, so, uh, in the old days of conventions, um, they have definitely become a lot more mainstream, which isn't necessarily horrible. It does take a little bit of the homegrown magic out of it, but people still find their joy in it. It's still a grouping of people that are super excited about something, and other people are super excited that they're super excited and are willing to listen and share, and you find people who are also excited about the things you like, and it's really special. You get to go and be someone else for a couple days, and people are excited about that. Like, people are excited that you're doing that and to share in your joy with it. And they have also become pretty expensive, and they can be very overwhelming, truffle. Yes, you're welcome about the fan. But, no, like, there are definitely you definitely have to take breaks, and I'm older now, and I remember how I used to just power through conventions and just, like, be able to go and do everything and see everything, and now I'm like, "Nope." When when the convention hall closes, I might stick around for a panel or 2, but, like, I'm like, "Yep, I'm done. I'm gonna go home and shower and sort my stuff for the next day and go to bed." Like, sounds like this. Yeah, yeah. You gotta pace yourself, make sure you're actually hydrating, not just all on caffeine, because, like, you will make yourself feel sick if you just start downing caffeine like crazy with an empty stomach and like, all the walking you're doing, but, like, yeah, the meetups are definitely fun, with Danmei becoming a lot more prevalent in, social media and mainstream entertainment. You'll usually have a Danmei meetup at a convention. So it's really cool to do that or to go to the photo meetups because then you could like info dump and just share your love for those things. Like you don't have to be cosplayed as that. You just can go and be like, "Oh my gosh, this person's cosplaying is this." And just geek out about it and it's really fun. But yeah, I'm reminded of the time I over revved in college. Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel like we all probably, have over caffeinated in college because I remember I used to be able to do, like, all-nighters and double all-nighters, and now I'm like, maybe 1 all-nighter, and then I'll be wiped out for, like, 3 days, but, like, oh, college is a different sport, but yeah. Oh, um, I wanted to give everyone a little update on our poll for what we're going to read next. So 14 people have voted. Currently, Song of the River's Heart by Yu Li Jing is winning with 43%. The follow-up In second place is The Villain's White Halo by Hao Da Yi Jun Wei Sheng Si, with 36%. Then we have White Cat's Divine Scratching Post by Liv Yi Qian He at 14, and Stratagem of Fated Winds by Min Yue Fu at 7%. So if you have not voted, please make sure to. I think I don't know. Do you think Monday is enough time to then call what we're doing next, or would you all prefer it stay up 1 week after that? Um, I mean, they do have that transmigrator aspect. So yes, the the Song of River's Heart definitely has a lot of Scumvillain vibes for sure. Um, White Halo, a little less so. But yeah. All right. So we think Monday should be enough time. All right. Then that means I'll be able to work on it a little bit before on Tuesday before. Oh, next week. I think some of you have probably seen the message. Monday is still going to be a thing. Tuesday, my brother asked if I would be able to come up a little earlier so I can help him. He has like horses and other animals, if I could help him. So I will actually be leaving Tuesday. And so I have pre-recorded kind of a card opening and a little bit of a sorting for Thursday. I have some boxes of Modao Zushi cards and ended up opening some of them. Song of River Heart is one book. It's a big book, but it's chunk. Well, it's a little chunky, but it's a single volume. Yeah, thank you. So it'll be Monday and Thursday, but the Thursday will not be alive. It'll just go live. Monday's still alive though, so please show up. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. There were some pretty cool cards. One of the boxes, I opened up 2 boxes, because the first one went really fast. It ended up being cardboard cards and not playing cards. So I was like, I had another set for when we reached 250. So I was like, we're really close, so it's okay. But yeah. Well, I hope you all enjoy it. Aw. Aw, I'm sorry that you've had some animal deaths recently. Give them a couple extra pets for me, please. All right. We're almost ready to start book 3, but we do have our blind box. I think we've gotten most of these. This is my last box from my big box. So I'm trying to think of what one we still haven't gotten. I think it might be this one that we still haven't gotten. So I think this might be our blind box, unless we get any of the specials, which I'm like, I'm pretty down to get this one, honestly. But yeah. Aw. All right. Let's see if I'm right. Three, two, one. Ha! I'm right. I remembered. This was pretty cool. Is there another part? Usually this one has like multiple pieces. Nope. All right. This one's really cool. I like the see-through antlers. It's cool. After this, we'll start a new set. I like it. I like it a lot. What's this one called? Oh, it's not in English. It's The Air. Ooh, The Air. Yeah. No, this one definitely has drip. Like, if someone walked in dressed like this at a convention, I'd so take their picture with permission. All right, you get to stay up here for the story, and now I have my bookmark. And now we shall start the stream. Well, we shall start the story. Going to move my snaky boys and my fan over here so we have some room. All right. Oh, let me know, as always, if there's any lag or anything, and I will happily reset the stream. The internet's been a bit weird today, so fingers crossed, no problems, but... Ugh. All right. Ah! I love it when my keyboard presses buttons. No! Stop pressing buttons! What is it pressing against that it's doing that? No! So, who wants to start a betting pool of whether Xuanmin and Xuxian get walked in on? Or how long it takes them to get distracted from investigating the house? 50 pages. Which will be about chapter 1. Or, part 1. Part 1 is 55 pages. So, I say 55 pages, Truffle. Okay. 22:45. All right. So, last time we discovered a house in a bamboo house in a, I wanted to say divot of a mountain. It's kind of a valley of a mountain almost. That was obscured by poisonous fog that Xuxian blew away, and they're exploring this house. They believe someone who is connected to Xuxian's stolen bones is in this house. Toxic Valley, thank you. And so they're exploring, and Xuanmin finds a book with his handwriting in it, which quote unquote freaks him out, startles him for sure. And they end up having a conversation about it with Xuxian, and he basically decides, okay, this is your house. They find a hidden room. They kind of move on with it. And Xuxian's basically like, I don't believe you're the one who tore out my bones. Yeah, Seven Seas definitely broke this up in a very interesting way, especially the first book where it would have super long chapters then really short ones. But I feel like I managed to break this one up rather logically, but we'll see. They're definitely beefy chapters. But they discovered basically a hidden basement, fell into an array. It was the spider array, as they found out. They had some hallucinations in the array. Shushion ended up breaking it first. They found out that this spider was kind of, I almost call it a curse. But it reacts a lot like Schwanman's mole and is supposed to be like a life-preserving spider, I think. But they break it, the other person is suffering. Everyone's okay, and now they're moving forward. We also have another group that is basically the acolytes, the disciples of the head preceptor. So, state preceptor, sorry. Schwanman. Or yeah, Schwanman is pretty much almost, he's the state preceptor. It's pretty obvious he's the state preceptor. They are his followers, his disciples. They're under his care. One of them's a ritualist, one of them is a diviner. The diviner is basically like, I'm getting vibes that the state preceptor is here. That can't be right. He's in seclusion. So they explore, they don't find anything. And then they leave. They're like, we're getting a different vibe elsewhere. Let's go. So this was before our group got to this valley, but I have a feeling that will apply very, very soon to our plot. But that's the best summary I've got at this point. All right, so 27. Let's go ahead and get started. If I forgot anything, please feel free to chime in. All right, so here are our current counts before we dive into the book. Our donkey count is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 6, 7, 87. Our Jiang Xining suffering is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 24. Our face count is sitting at 5, 10, 13. Our wanted poster count is sitting at 5, 9. Yep, 87. And then I guess before we start, here is our cover. So fancy. I like the golden line connecting everything. Very symbolic. All right, here's the extended picture, which is gorgeous. Oh, I see someone hiding up here. And I think I see some of the dragon bones. Very cool. I love the colors. Aww. I have a feeling that this is like the after story. Epilogue. Cute. So cute. All right. Arc 4. Unchanged. In the summer of the 23rd year of the Tianxi era, a dragon fell in Huameng County, Guangdong. It stood as tall as a person and measured several hundred feet in length. Ensnared within a net, its skin and flesh were cleaved open. Within it, no spine was found. As the officials and townsfolk gathered to witness the scene, a mighty downpour began. In the surging waves, the dragon was swept out to sea and disappeared without a trace. Chronicles of Huameng County. No, that armor's pretty sick. I only have volume 1. It's making me want to buy the rest of physical volumes. No, they're very pretty. For sure. Chapter 28. Iron Military Tags. With the mist dissipated, the path leading out of the forest was clear and visible. Though the Fang residence wasn't far, Shi Tu Zhang and Lu Nianqi's slow pace meant that they would only reach their destination by sunset if they started their journey now. By the way, I came up with a funny idea for a scum villain fic. Shen Yuan tries gardening and it goes badly, like Bunzilla and Bad Plants badly. I would love that. If you do end up writing it, Truffle, please share the title and or link. I would love to read that. Worried that any further delay might leave them facing closed gates, the two quickly departed. By then, Xuanmin had already settled Shu Xian back into the wheelchair just outside the door. Shu Xian watched as the two figures vanished into the far edge of the woods, then suddenly heard Xuanmin's voice behind him, toned low, speak. Shu Xian turned his head in confusion. Xuanmin gestured toward the forest with his hand. You sent them away on purpose. He noticed that. Rubbing his face, Shu Xian flicked his gaze away. He muttered vaguely, Fine, my bad. Xuanmin shot him a puzzled look. Shu Xian hesitated a little more, scratching his cheek. Eventually, he jerked his chin toward Xuanmin's neck. Dragon saliva. I just have this image of him screaming into the sky, Stupid hack author! Stupid story! Yeah, I could totally see that. So if you remember, dragon saliva, along with being like a healing panacea, is also an aphrodisiac, a very long-lasting aphrodisiac. And Xuanmin has had a second dose, which increases the effects. Shu Xian, I definitely didn't send them away to cure your aphrodisiac poisoning. Nope. Right. For a moment, Xuanmin was taken aback by Shu Xian's ready admission of fault. Then, with a resigned look, Xuanmin shook his head, turned away, and flicked his sleeve as he headed back inside. It's fine. Because why wouldn't it be an aphrodisiac, right, Annika? Yeah, sure, it's fine. Like hell it is, Shu Xian snapped. You're burning like a furnace, and you still have the nerve to say it's fine? 3 injections of dragon saliva were beyond what anyone, even Xuanmin, could handle. How could he be fine? He was simply accustomed to holding himself back, and now he was treating his discomfort like another burden to be silently endured. Shu Xian was about to say more when Xuanmin summoned the blackbird from inside the building. The bird gave a sharp flap of its wings against the roof, then the floor, and Xuanmin descended again into the stone chamber below. After a short while, Xuanmin returned with the lifeless man, though, since the monk was averse to filth and unwilling to touch most anyone, he was relying on his talisman's power to keep the body suspended in front of him. He reached down and pulled at something on the man's waist before taking him outside. Xuanmin found a spot in the sprawling wilderness outside the bamboo building and buried the man there. Minded of the Pacific Rim where they're selling kaiju bone powder as a male helper. Once back inside, Xuanmin drew another talisman, this time for cleansing, and thoroughly purified the entire house along with his own robes. Shu Xian stared. Your robes didn't even touch him, you know. Calm and unhurried, Xuanmin moved about with his usual expression, methodically erasing every trace of the stranger's presence from the bamboo house. Only when he was satisfied did he finally stop in front of Shu Xian. Let's go in, he said quietly before picking up Shu Xian and carrying him back inside. He placed him on the desk again, though this time the surface had been wiped spotless. Unwilling to touch anyone but Shu Xian, Right, Ruby? This bald donkey is really truly stupidly fastidious, Shushan thought. If they were going to search for traces of the past, they couldn't just skim the surface. Xuanmin stood before the bookshelf and pulled out a few volumes. He set down a couple of books next to Shushan and began flipping through the others himself. The meaning of this gesture was obvious. He was tacitly allowing Shushan to help him search for clues within the books. Oh, 88. I totally missed that bald donkey. Thank you, Truffle. The subconscious inclusion, the lack of guardedness, pleased Shushan. He picked up one of the books and leafed through it, though his mind wasn't fully focused on the task, because he was still thinking about dragon saliva. Xuanmin seemed determined to suppress every bit of discomfort and lock it deep inside without letting a single trace show. His fingers steadily turned pages, one after another, unhurried and unshaken. He revealed no hint of anything amiss. Shushan stared at the book in his hands for a while before his gaze drifted back to Xuanmin. After a moment's thought, he reached out and brushed his fingers against Xuanmin's hand. Ooh. He pulled back immediately. Xuanmin's skin was scorching hot. "Let me help you," Shushan blurted out, almost without thinking. Ooh. Xuanmin's attention was still fixed on the book. He gave a low hum in response, but didn't look up, nor did his fingers stop turning pages. Clearly, he hadn't registered what Shushan's abrupt offer meant. He'd probably assumed it was about searching through the books. But having spoken, Shushan couldn't take it back. "I mean with the dragon saliva." Xuanmin's hand stilled on the page. Since he had been repeatedly contaminated by this troublemaker's saliva, he had made a point of keeping his distance. Aside from the unavoidable necessity of carrying Shushan, since the latter still couldn't walk, he had avoided physical contact. Dude literally just touched your hand, and you were fine with it. Like a moment ago, Xuanmin had placed the books beside Shushan, but then moved back to the shelf rather than stay by the desk to read. If someone else had done this, their intentions would have been obvious. With Xuanmin, it didn't seem so deliberate. He wasn't the type to seek closeness with others. Nevertheless, Shushan had noticed. This was why he wanted to resolve the effects of his saliva sooner rather than later. Otherwise, this bald donkey will keep dancing around me like I'm some kind of plague rat. 89. "Let me help you," Shushan repeated. He continued to absently flip through the pages of his book, but he was looking at Xuanmin. Maybe didn't notice the touch. Maybe, Ruby. It's definitely a possibility. Xuanmin was silent for a time before turning to him. "How?" His expression remained as detached and solemn as ever, devoid of any hint of impropriety. Evidently, he assumed Shushan had some conventional method, like an antidote, to counteract the venom. Shushan narrowed his eyes and bit the tip of his tongue lightly. After a brief hesitation, he coughed and forged ahead. "You know the saying people have about floods? Blocking is less effective than dredging. How did you even become a monk? In the fragments of memory you've recovered, was there anyone enforcing rules on you? Were the precepts strict? That there's that other saying, isn't there? Wine and meat pass through the gut, but the Buddha stays in the heart. If no one's keeping watch over you, Shushan rarely bothered with such lengthy preambles, and he had no idea if he was trying to persuade Xuan Min or himself. Yet the heavy atmosphere in the room remained unchanged, and as he spoke, even he began to falter. His words slowed until they stopped. Their gazes met. Neither of them spoke. Both of their faces were blank. However, beneath their matching exteriors, their inner thoughts were quite different. After a long, silent standoff, Shushian's temper flared. Unable to bear it any longer, he tossed the book he was holding onto the table with a loud snap as the book's pages slammed shut. Just say it! Do you want my help or not? Huh? Xuan Min lowered his eyes as if he hadn't heard a word and turned another page of his book. Then, like he suddenly remembered something, he reached into the hidden pocket of his robe and flipped his sleeve. A talisman shot out and landed squarely on Shushian's forehead. You! Shushian swallowed the curse on his tongue. He couldn't move an inch now that he was sealed in place. It took him a while to suppress the urge to vomit blood. If this whole mess hadn't been his fault to begin with, he might have passed out from sheer frustration. Fine, fine! You're so damn impressive after all, but I advise against sealing me. You still need me to dig your grave. There really was a risk of that. The effects of dragon saliva took time to manifest. If Shushian remembered correctly, the last time Xuan Min hadn't started struggling until nightfall. This time, he was already feverish when the third dose had not fully taken effect. If he kept suppressing that inner fire until the full force hit, he might not survive when it did. There's no need. Xuan Min had waited until after sealing Shushian to speak. No need my ass. Shushian was too furious to respond. If you have nothing else to do, you might as well use the copper coins to nourish your bones, Xuan Min added. Nourish your dad! Every time Xuan Min opened his mouth, Shushian grew more irritated. He was dying to snap back at that bald donkey, but Xuan Min was impervious to words. A retort would change nothing. It might even make Shushian angrier. 90. See if I care if you live or die, he muttered on the inside, and closed his eyes to focus on healing his bones. Out of sight, out of mind. Xuan Min's copper coins were genuinely helpful, or genuinely useful. Aside from the inexplicable resonance and connection to Xuan Min they created after prolonged use, there was no other side effects. Shushian trusted them enough to immerse himself in the healing process, and he quickly shut out the outside world. In the past, it had taken him a whole night to reconstruct half of the golden threads in his bones. The process was much faster this time. The coins responded to him as if they had almost accepted him as their master. Perhaps Xuan Min, tainted by dragon saliva, had inadvertently shared some of his aura with Shushian. Wow, that attempt failed hard. Yes, it did, Truffle. Yes, it did. Shushian could almost feel the golden threads pulling toward the broken ends of his bones. Each tug was laborious, but with every successful connection came a wave of relief. Another sensation crept through his body during this process, mingling with the spiritual energy from the coins. It slithered along the threads, spreading from the depths of his bones outward. It was a damp, heated ache, prickling like countless ants gnawing at him, restless and unbearable, though not quite painful. Shushian forced himself to endure the discomfort as he focused on guiding the thread upward. Almost there. Damn it, it's so hot. Just a little more. Fuck, it's really too hot. Got our hopes up for nothing. Caught in this torment, Shushian struggled back and forth until finally, just as he was on the verge of exploding, he connected the threads to the other broken end. In that instant, his entire spine, waist, and legs seemed to unlock. A warm current flowed through his meridians, bones, and the golden threads that now filled his spine. Slowly, the current seeped into his legs. Success! His mind relaxed at once, a half year's frustration evaporating in that moment. But the relief was short lived, and his lingering restlessness surged like a tidal wave. He heard himself gasp. As his senses abruptly sharpened, he realized he was drenched in sweat, his skin hypersensitive. So much so that the slightest shift of his clothes sent shivers down his spine, eliciting another wave of perspiration. Don't know why I struggle with that, but I did. Dazed, he remained frozen, barely able to savor the joy of his restored legs before another realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. Because of the resonance from the copper coins, the effects of the dragon saliva had somehow transferred to him. At that moment, 4 phrases echoed in his mind. Shooting yourself in the foot. What goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. And how the hell is anyone supposed to endure this? Unbeknownst to them, the sky outside had deepened into a profound midnight blue. A rare windless night had fallen, and the wide expanses of the wild forest in the mountain hollow, stood in complete silence without the slightest rustle of leaves, lending an unusual stillness to the scene. It was broken only by the occasional cry, distant and drawn out, from the black bird Xuan Min had probably raised. The blackbird had flown out of the building right after nightfall, its whereabouts now unknown. The sound it made, however, was unlike any normal bird's call. It was eerily more like a human sigh. In the dead of night, the effect was chilling. No wonder rumors of hauntings had spread. That would be so creepy. You're just walking through a forest and you hear what sounds like a human sighing in a tree. Like not just in a forest, but like coming from the top of a tree. That would definitely freak me out. I'd be like, "Nope, I was already freaked out in a dark forest." That just infinitely where I would turn right around and just like I'm done. Bye. The sighs echoed through the valley, overlapping and reverberating. The mist that Shushian had swept away during the day returned. Yeah, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. Yeah, no. No. Hard pass. The mist that Shushan had swept away during the day returned, creeping from the depths of the valley until it filled every crevice. This miasma was far heavier than normal fog, and its thick, greasy white swiftly enveloped everything. Anyone within it would have been unable to see their own hand. Even those nearby could only be heard, not seen. One time I nearly stepped on a bird that was on the forest floor. I still remember the forest floor rising up. Ay ay ay. Thankfully Shitu Zhang and Lu Nianqi had left. If they'd been caught in this fog on the road, their lives would have been in danger. Unlike them, Shu Xian and Xuanmin had no reason to fear the mist. When they'd cleared it before, they'd simply done it for the sake of the other two. They had ways to ward off its toxicity, and it wouldn't affect them much. After its dispersal, the foggy miasma returned even thicker than before. It permeated the bamboo house and the hollow, seeping through windows and doors, so that the lower inner room was filled with hazy vapor and a slight chill. Shushan, sitting in this cool mist, was burning up and drenched in sweat. With a frown, he yanked at his collar. His robes were in disarray from all his repeated fiddling and tugging. They now hung open and loose against his body. Though the black robes appeared dry, they were already soaked through. The thin fabric stuck unpleasantly to his shoulders, back, and arms. The loosened front sagged at his abdomen, exposing a tapering strip of skin from his neck down to his waist. Oh, hello, Yan Wuxi. 6 months of partial paralysis had left him much gaunter. His muscles, now slick with a fine film of sweat, had atrophied. The sweat's sheen caught the dim light, emphasizing the slight dips and rises of his bones. He remained sitting at the desk, head down, his hands gripping its edge. Perspiration beaded on his eyelashes, blurring his vision even through his half-lidded eyes. I thought he was, like, frozen. But with a frown, he yanked at his collar. Did Xuan Min remove the talisman? I thought he was, like, paralyzed right now. Like, not, pardon the term, like, not just his legs, but he got hit with the talisman. So how is he like, hey, I don't know. Shushan didn't know how much worse this triple dose of dragon saliva was compared to what Xuan Min had endured that night, but he was miserable. Waves of sweat poured down his body, and his skin felt everything. Even his sweat evaporating made him flinch. Every inch of him, every pore, screamed at the slightest sensation. Okay, because Xuan Min is in, well, the talisman came off by itself. Okay. Alright, I just confused me for a second. The heat and restlessness demanded release, but he had no idea of where to get it from. Worse, the intensity left his bones aching. They seemed weak and bloated, as if waterlogged. Even lifting a hand felt exhausting. His mind grew foggy. The blackbird's sighs outside twisted into something suggestive in his ears, only fueling his agitation. He had meant for Xuan Min to find a solution to this, but if the monk kept resisting it, Xian's torment would never end. If this continues, he'll really... Shu Xian squinted and licked his lips, then shook his head to clear it. The motion sent a trickle of liquid down his neck. It left a jarring tingle as it traveled from the nape of his neck, ran along his collarbone, then slid over his chest. His grip on the table tightened, and a shudder ran through him as he exhaled sharply, brows pinched. He might have called out to Xuan Min. Maybe he'd mumbled something, or maybe the sound had died in his throat before it emerged. He didn't know. After what felt like an eternity, when he opened his eyes, the mist in miasma had thickened. Had someone summoned it, or had it gathered by itself? He could no longer make out the nearby oil lamp, nor his robes crumpled around his waist. Ooh. Drowning in the dense fog left Shushan a little disoriented. He frowned, breathing hard as his heavy eyes wandered vacantly. His sweat-soaked lashes fluttered once, then twice, the movements languorous. Yeah, I said it right. Languorous. Like, slow, kind of, like, oh, languorous. He couldn't even shut them all the way. Like, kind of hazy, if that's the physically hazy. Hazy lazy. Through the haze, he heard Xuan Min's voice from somewhere close. Or was it distant? Give me your hand. Unsure if he'd imagined it, Shushan loosened one hand from the table and slowly reached forward. He'd only extended it a few inches when another hand, boiling hot but steady, grasped him. That hand held him fast, giving him another source of support. Naturally, Shushan leaned into it, letting his weight sink into that grip. His fingers tightened as his lips parted to speak, but before any words escaped, he gasped harshly. Slow, almost sleepy. There you go. Another hand had emerged from the mist to caress the skin of Shushan's abdomen. Oh, hello. Shushan's lashes trembled, his breath hitching in confusion. Then it quickened, becoming harried. The rush of heat and urgency had finally found an outlet. He frowned as he let go of the table and seized the hand at his waist. He tugged it closer, following his instincts as he guided it beneath the crumpled fabric of his robe. "Don't move," the owner of the hand murmured in a low voice. The fog was so dense that Shushan's eyes saw nothing but white. He couldn't see Xuanmin's face, but his tone was as cool as always. Except there was a hint of hoarseness, likely from the prolonged fever. At this point, obedience was the last thing on Shushan's mind. He guided Xuanmin's hand to fumble beneath his robes. The folds of Shushan's robe shifted with each movement of Xuanmin's fingers, hurried and disordered, clumsy but relentless. Okay, my hopes aren't the only thing that's up right now. The encounter was frantic, and Shushan's mind faded in and out the whole time. He only knew that at some point the man silently aiding him had been dragged closer, so close Shushan had to part his knees to make space. Even as he shuddered and gasped through the hurried, confused tugging, he felt his partner's physical response. The fog remained impenetrable. He still couldn't see Xuanmin's face. Shushan could only hear his breath inches away, mingling with his own. Xuanmin's other hand, the one supporting him, had ended up pressed against the table. His fingers clenched and unclenched in rhythm with his other hand. Shushan's forehead rested heavily against Xuanmin's shoulder, his half-closed eyes wet with moisture. Xuanmin told him again not to move, then tried to step back for some reason. Shushan tightened his grip on Xuanmin. The potency of the dragon saliva had induced an unusual sensation, making release almost impossible. So much time passed that Shushan's agitation peaked, and he almost cried out before he finally felt that an ending was close. When it came, he was unsure if he had actually found release or had just seized Xuanmin's hand. Shushan's fingers trembled violently, his spine taut as a bowstring. He abruptly buried his forehead in the crook of Xuanmin's neck, his squinted eyes glazed over. He held on like that for a long moment until he finally sagged, his breath rolling in heavy gasps. Another wave of perspiration spread across his body. He was completely soaked. Yet the potency of the dragon's saliva was not so easily dismissed. Before long, the restlessness returned. The night became a blur of fog and panting, fragmented beyond recollection. By the end, Shushan couldn't even remember how long he'd been barreling along with Xuanmin's help. No matter how long it lasted, the mist never lifted, and Shushan never saw Xuanmin's face. The strangeness of it all added an odd sense of shame, enough that even the shameless Shushan felt his cheeks burn at times. Eventually, Shushan stilled, the impatience within him gone, leaving only a faint echo of desire that faded it with the bellows of heat rising from his skin. He leaned drowsily on the desk, and after a short pause, the idle hand fiddled with the oil lamp. The dim light brightened, and the heavy fog seemed to understand. It lifted, The fog Xuanmin summoned. Shushan thought this, but was too tired to say it. He glanced downward. His disheveled robes had been somewhat straightened, but the table was still a mess. Where the lamplight fell, it revealed sweat-smeared fingertips, suggestive yet indistinct. Nearby, Xuanmin sat on a cushion, eyes closed, quietly meditating. The neat stack of books he'd picked out rested beside him. It was as if he had never left his spot. The contrast between his composure and Shushian's disarray was so stark that for a moment, Shushian wondered if it had all been a hallucination. Then he noticed the faint marks on the monk's wrist, proof that someone had held him. Otherwise, Shushian might have thought he'd fallen prey to another inner demon. There's a picture. Are you ready? I need a cigarette, and I don't even smoke. Oh my. I might have to put a little note on the top, be like, this one's steamy. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, they went for it. Yeah, everything is very wet, Annika. Uh-huh. It's very steamy. Um, um yeah, I might put a like extra steamy in the title. Or like a spice warning. Thank you, Annika. It was very interesting to read. Studying the mark, Shushian finally spoke, his voice lazy but insistent. Courtesy demands I reciprocate. Come here, I'll help you too. You can summon the fog again and we'll pretend it never happened. Xuanmin didn't open his eyes. There's no need, he said quietly. It's already been resolved. Shushian, still dazed, blinked slowly. Resolved? How? If meditation could fix it, then why did I? He cut himself off, leaving the rest unsaid. Xuanmin hesitated. Once you were free of it. So was I. Shushian was flirting, and now he's flirting with death. For a while, Shushian processed this in stunned silence. He wanted to spew blood all over that bald donkey's face. How perfect! Like shooting an arrow at your enemy, only for it to turn in midair and hit you in the heart instead. Give me your belt, Shushian said flatly. I didn't forget the donkey. Hang on. Xuanmin, eyes still closed, frowned. Why? I don't feel like living anymore. I'm going to hang myself at your door. An awkward silence fell. The atmosphere had been manageable while they were speaking, but now an undercurrent of unspoken tension began to permeate the room. Shushian lowered his eyes, letting the quiet stretch. What time is it, anyway? He said at last. If you're finished sorting through everything, should we head back to the Fang residence soon? Before Xuanmin could even respond, Shushian felt something in his outer robe's pocket twitch. The movement was fleeting, a brief, subtle shift, then it stilled. All right, 91. Was that my imagination? Still sluggish, Shushian stared at the folds of his robe. He didn't bother to check inside it. He just wanted to see if it would happen again. The soft sound of metal lightly tapping against itself echoed through the otherwise silent room. Clink. It moved, Shushan muttered, pointing at his robe before instinctively looking back at Xuan Min. Xuan Min had opened his eyes, and his dark gaze was fixed in Shu Xian's direction. It was impossible to tell whether he had just opened them upon hearing Shu Xian's words, or if he had been watching for a while. The lamplight was too dim to reach him all the way, leaving Xuan Min's expression shadowed beneath his brow. Even if Shu Xian could see it clearly, his brain, drained from a night of debauchery, wouldn't have been able to decipher the emotions anyway. Xuan Min was probably just as expressionless as ever. Something moved, Shu Xian repeated. Truly, some things required moderation. Too much indulgence not only made one lazy, but dull-witted. Shu Xian's vapid expression was certainly not his usual one. He'd seemed relatively coherent when talking about what had happened, but faced with a sudden change, he was completely lost. Xuan Min, draped in shadow, watched Shu Xian for a while before just responding, His voice, deep and steady in the quiet night, carried none of its usual sharpness or chill. Wrapped in the warm glow of the lamplight, it held a trace of gentleness, stirring something inexplicable in Shu Xian's chest. He's being gentle. Ooh. Oh my goodness. Lost in that feeling, Shu Xian remained still until the rustling in his pocket sounded again, snapping him back to attention. At this third disturbance, he shook off some of his lethargy, and reached into his pocket. The fabric inside was still damp from his earlier sweating. When he pulled out a handful of thin iron tags, their surfaces were misted with condensation. They just had sexy times, and he was wearing the robes with all of the restless spirits. Oh my goodness. Oh man. um Their surfaces were misted with condensation. Clink! As Shu Xian laid them out, another faint tremor ran through the tags. This time, he was certain one of them had moved. He placed the 24 or so tags on the table beside himself. His slender fingers sifted through them under the lamplight. I hope they enjoyed the show. Clink! Found it, Shu Xian said, tapping the culprit before picking it out. Few dozen witnesses. Perhaps its resentment hasn't dispersed, Xuan Min said. Shu Xian hummed lazily, holding the tag up to the light. He squinted and turned it over to examine the scratches on the back. After a long moment, he clicked his tongue. Can't read it. The marks were too deep and chaotic, impossible to decipher, let alone identify what had been written there originally. That should have an accidental voyeurism tag. Right? Shu Xian straightened up and extended the tag toward Xuan Min. What? Xuan Min asked. Take it. Help them pass on. Shu Xian gestured at the pile of military tags. 28 of them. You'll need 28 sticks of incense. As he spoke, the tag in his hand trembled again, as if trying to escape his grip. Don't move, Shu Xian said absently to the tag. Don't move. When Shu Xian had been lost in desperation earlier, fumbling clumsily in the fog, Xuan Min had said those same words more than once. The memory of Xuanmin's voice mingling with his own ragged breathing rose unbidden in Xian's mind. He trailed off abruptly, and by the time he regained his focus, his ears and cheeks were hot. He stiffly clutched the tag and glanced at Xuanmin. Xuanmin's gaze lowered briefly before it flicked up to sweep over Xian's face. But his eyes settled on the tag instead of meeting Xian's. Whether it was coincidence or deliberate avoidance wasn't obvious. Earlier, after the mist had cleared, Xian had adopted a casual, lazy tone to suppress the awkwardness. After all, despite his many years of existence, he had never encountered a situation like this one. Unsure how to handle it, he could only treat it as something utterly mundane, as if it were nothing more than a casual favor between companions. Given enough time, the hazy, chaotic memories would fade, and it might become just another forgettable, ordinary incident. He and Xuanmin could return to their usual dynamic, unchanged. Perhaps that was why Xuanmin had summoned the mist, to obscure their faces, to avoid seeing each other's expressions, to make it all feel more like a fevered dream, leaving no unnecessary aftermath. Now, as certain words triggered unavoidable recollections and Xian's emotions surged, he realized some things couldn't be brushed aside by acting naturally. He studied the tag in his hand before snapping his head up. He looked at Xuanmin. Forcing a smirk, Xian tried to drag the atmosphere back to normal with an extra offhanded expression. Unfortunately, he only managed a strained, half-hearted smile. After a second, he gave up. "This tag doesn't seem resentful," he said flatly. "More like it has some unfinished business." Xuanmin was either spaced out or deep in thought. He paused before he came back to the conversation. "After being sealed in the underwater tomb for so long, its spirit has mostly scattered. There isn't enough resentment for it to coalesce. Coalesce. There we go. I was like, I know what you mean. To form. To coalesce." Xuanmin seemed to think about it, then rose from the meditation cushion and walked over. "Give it to me," he said, extending his hand. Though Xuanmin had been looking at Xian earlier, he avoided eye contact now that he was close and simply took the tag. He wrapped it in a talisman, murmured a sutra, then flicked the paper-wrapped tag with his finger. The tag emitted a low hum and vibrated violently in his grip. Then a faintly outlined figure emerged from it, hovering just above the ground before Xuanmin. Xian watched the figure. Its features were blurred, as if shrouded in mist. Mist. Xian's face fell. He rolled his eyes skyward, forcefully suppressing the inappropriate association before continuing his appraisal. Though indistinct, the figure's features were vaguely refined. He wasn't dressed in military armor, but in plain, worn winter robes. His sleeves hung empty at his sides, unsupported by flesh and bone. Clearly, such severe injuries would have made returning to the battlefield impossible. Without hands, holding weapons was out of the question. It was inevitable that he would have to go home. But for a soldier in this state, homecoming must have been bittersweet. As Xian studied him, the figure seemed startled. He looked down at himself, taking a long moment to realize he had manifested a form. Then he knelt on one knee before Xuanmin and Xian, bowing deeply in an awkward, incomplete salute. Without hands to brace himself, standing back up was quite a task. Thank you, Master, for your help," he said, his voice as faint and indistinct as his form. Even so, he seemed surprised. "I can speak again," he murmured. "Can you hear me?" Xuanmin gave him a once-over before nodding. "Were you the one that moved earlier?" Shu Xian asked. The figure nodded. Yes. Any unfinished business or lingering grudges keeping you from moving on? The figure nodded again, though he shook his head right after that. No, not grudges, just. Unlike a normal spirit, he had been pieced together from fragments of resentment and a shattered soul. His speech was slow and halting, as if he was struggling to remember words mid-sentence. After a pause, he managed, I heard the two of you talking about leaving. Heard? Shushian froze, recalling his earlier attempt at small talk. He'd said something like, if we're done here, let's clean up and get back to the Fang residence. But seriously, heard? You heard? What else did you hear? Shushian's face cycled through shades of black, green, and white. He darted his eyes toward Xuanmin. Xuanmin glanced back at him, then at the spirit, as if also waiting for an answer to the question. If this damn tag had been conscious the whole time, able to hear everything outside, Shushian had never felt his face burn like this before. If a third party knew what they had done, he couldn't help recalling the details. Actively, this time. Yet even after retracing it all, the fragments of his recollection remained hazy. He couldn't remember whether he'd cried out in desperation or if there had been other reckless words. Probably not, but who could say? Well, someone could, but Shushian eyed Xuanmin before pinching the bridge of his own nose. Maybe I should just die, or hurry up and send this tactless ghost on its way. Xuanmin shifted slightly. Whether intentionally or not, he now stood between Shushian and the spirit, as if shielding someone from view. Blocked from sight, Shushian could no longer see the soldier, only Xuanmin's back. Likewise, the soldier couldn't see Shushian. The thought eased some of his embarrassment. Fortunately, the spirit's reply came quickly. My mind's been foggy. I only regained awareness when I heard you mention leaving. But before you go, could you do me a favor? Speak, Xuanmin said, as succinct as ever. Perhaps surprised by their immediate agreement, or maybe he was simply disoriented, the spirit paused. Well, could you take me back to my hometown? And yes, he is definitely acting like a kid that got caught. Hang on. We're about to move on to chapter 29. I just need a drink. I'll just sip of this. All right. Come on, pen. 1830. All right. Chapter 29, Passerby. Shushian blinked, leaning toward Xuanmin to glance at him. Your hometown. The soldier nodded, still speaking haltingly. Earlier, I heard you mention Mount Boji. My home is on its sun-facing side at the foothills. It's just a small village. That wasn't far at all. Just a short walk around the mountain's base from this valley. However, didn't you say you only regained awareness when you heard us talking about leaving? Now you're saying you heard the mountain's name too? When exactly did you wake up? Shushian had a dozen questions lodged in his throat, but he swallowed them all and leaned back with a flat expression. My parents and wife are still there. If you could bring my military tag to them, it'd give them closure. Fortunately, the soldier seemed too preoccupied to notice Shushian's odd behavior. He rambled on to Xuanmin about when he had enlisted, how many years it had been since he returned home, and on and on. His words were disjointed, but not unpleasant. At first, Shushian listened a little, propped against the table, but soon he was openly staring at Xuanmin's back, lost in thought. It struck him that this might have been the first time he'd ever properly looked at Xuanmin from behind. When he'd been a paper figure clinging to Xuanmin's waist pouch, he'd only ever seen the monk's chin from below. When he'd become a golden marble, he'd had even fewer chances to look out. After regaining his true form, he'd either been coiled around Xuanmin's wrist like a thread or looming over him like a small mountain. Even in human form, he'd usually been carried, his face hidden under black robes. Once he'd gotten the wheelchair, he'd always taken the lead. I guess they owe it to him after what they made him witness. I mean, yeah, they, I love how Shushian is kind of like, wait a minute. You said you just woke up now, but we haven't been talking about Mount Boji. Like, that was a while ago, my friend. Like, so how long have you been awake? Like, excuse me? I need to know. Admittedly, it was an ideal vantage point. No. Now that he thought about it, he'd seen Xuanmin from every bizarre angle except this very ordinary one. If anything, he'd been the one turning his back to Xuanmin more often. Admittedly, it was an ideal vantage point. No matter how brazen his gaze, it didn't matter. Xuanmin couldn't see it, and there was no risk of awkwardness. Xuanmin's shoulders were broad, his frame lean yet solid beneath his thin monk robes. He was taller than Shushian had realized, tall enough to block someone completely from view. The outline of that back made Shushian want to move closer. His fingers twitched against the table. Just as he began to lift his hand, the soldier came to the end of his spiel. I beg you to grant this last wish. In my next life I'll... No need. Xuanmin cut him off coolly. Without entering reincarnation, such promises are meaningless. Thinking he had been refused, the soldier grew frantic, and he began to stutter. We'll send you off after finishing up, Xuanmin said, cutting him off. The soldier, still stumbling, thanked them profusely. Shushian's raised hand settled back on the table. Whether he touched it or not, facing Xuanmin's back, eased his discomfort somewhat. Shushian and Xuanmin are the kings of the side quest. They really are, Truffle. Are you just taking these few books? Shushian asked. There's no need. I've memorized them. Xuanmin glanced at him before turning around. It's nearly dawn. If we deliver this to the village before returning to the Fang residence, the sun will be up. Meeting Xuanmin's eyes brought back some of Shushian's earlier days. When Xuanmin reached out to lift him, Shushian moved to comply on instinct, only for his body to stiffen like a board from head to toe. The moment Xuanmin's robes brushed against him, Shushian jumped back to awareness. My legs are fine! He looked up sharply as he spoke, knocking his forehead against Xuanmin's chin with a thunk. Ow. Shushian hissed, but before he could react, Xuanmin touched him where they'd collided. Xuanmin's fingers gently massaged the sore area on Shushian's forehead. A dragon's head isn't so easily dented. I was hissing on your behalf, Shushian grumbled. Since their earlier activities, Xuanmen's touch had become impossible to ignore. Shushian stayed rigid but didn't pull away. He let Xuanmen rub the spot a few times before he asked dryly, "Did you bite your tongue?" "It's fine." Xuanmen withdrew and looked at Shushian's lower half. "You said your legs are healed?" Shushian nodded. "Earlier, you told me to use the coins to heal my bones. By nightfall, they were fixed. I just didn't get a chance to say so." Oh, Esper lady, you have missed some things. You're gonna want to rewatch the beginning. I'm going to put a spice warning in the title for this one. You remember the dragon saliva bit? It definitely came into play. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, I'm not gonna spoil that part for you, but yeah, you're definitely going to gonna want to go listen to that when you can. But plot wise, not much has gone forth except we have one of the tags, one of the soldier tags. Do you want to see the picture? Do you want to wait and see it when you're listening? I will give you that choice, Esper. You can definitely see the picture. This is what you get to look forward to, Esper lady. Uh-huh. Yeah. So yeah. You get to look forward to that. But other than that, one of the tags that they brought along from last chapter actually responded and asked them to take his tag to his village, which is at the bottom of Mount Boji, which I think they're on right now. And they were like, yeah, okay. And Shushian meditated and his legs are now healed. They are atrophied. So like they're not super strong, but they are healed. So my legs are fine. And then they just bumped heads. Since their earlier activities, Xuanmen's touch had become impossible to ignore. Shushian stayed rigid but didn't pull away. He let Xuanmen rub the spot a few times before he asked dryly, "Did you bite your tongue?" "It's fine." Xuanmen withdrew and looked at Shushian's lower half. "You said your legs are healed?" Shushian nodded. "Earlier, you told me to use the coins to heal my bones. By nightfall, they were fixed. I just didn't get a chance to say so." The words tumbled out before he could stop them. He hadn't gotten a chance to say so, and why not? Because the entire night had been spent on, well, other pursuits. Why had he said that? Brought up the taboo subject. Ugh. Shushian averted his eyes and spoke in a monotone. "In short, first, my legs work. Second, I should stop talking. That's all." He pressed his lips together as if sealing them shut on the spot. "Yeah, very nice." Xuanmen answered, indicating he had heard. Before the odd atmosphere could thicken again, he turned to the bookshelf and replaced the volumes he'd singled out earlier. Shushian watched Xuanmen's back for a little while before he looked away. Biting his tongue, Shushian braced his hands on the table and tentatively moved his legs. They moved. Of course they did. He'd already moved them earlier when pulling Xuanmen between them. Mentally scoffing at himself, Shushian planted his feet firmly on the ground and slid off the table. As it turned out, even if now functioning, legs that had been immobilized for half a year might not have the strength to support one's full weight. Shushian's knees buckled in a flash. Before Shushian could collapse into an unsightly heap, Xuanmin's hand shot out. He gripped Shushian's wrist and caught him with unshakable steadiness. Xuanmin's hold was so firm that the tendons bulged on the back of his hand. Weren't you putting your books away? Shushian asked. Do you have eyes in the back of your head? Xuanmin ignored the question, frowning. Why would you get down so recklessly? If soaring into the skies isn't a problem, why would descending to the earth require caution? Shushian retorted. Leaning on Xuanmin's support, Shushian tried to channel strength into his legs. The long, numb limbs finally began tingling with delayed sensation, as if countless fine needles were piercing every inch of his skin. The feeling was far from pleasant, but to Shushian it was nothing short of miraculous. As the prickling numbness faded, he could feel his dormant legs awakening. I can walk, Shushian said, looking up at Xuanmin with something like wonder. Still bracing against Xuanmin's grip, he stomped his feet to shake off the last of the tingling before attempting a step. I can really walk. His tone was almost dreamy, as if he couldn't quite believe it. Like he'd been granted something extraordinary. For someone so unruly and proud, accustomed to soaring through clouds with thunder at his heels, this simple ability left him stupefied for a long moment. He seemed afraid to trust it. When he looked up again, he found Xuanmin's gaze had shifted from his legs to his face. What's wrong with my face? Shushian touched his cheek, snapping out of his odd stupor. Do I look stupid? If someone broke your legs and paralyzed you for half a year, you'd probably react worse. He chuckled ruefully. Having been caught, Xuanmin averted his eyes. Take a few more steps. I'll support you. Lost in the joy of regained mobility, Shushian didn't catch the rare gentleness in Xuanmin's tone. We are just being fed tonight, like, oh my goodness. True to form, the dragon's physique was extraordinary. Despite the long period of disuse, his legs regained full strength after just a few steps, as if they had never been injured. Only Shushian knew the truth. His missing vertebrae hadn't returned. The threads conjured by Xuanmin's coin served as substitutes, and the substitutes were temporary. For true recovery, he'd need to reclaim the rest of his spine. Nevertheless, being able to walk and run again was enough to lift Shushian's spirits. The sheer relief overshadowed everything else, so much so that his earlier embarrassment faded. Forgetting himself, he walked steadily up the steps to the outer room and pointed at the wheelchair by the door. It's yours. Might come in handy 50 years from now, Shushian declared with the tip of his chin. Xuanmin blinked. If he let this troublemaker wander around the house with all of his pent-up energy, he might spout even more infuriating nonsense, so Xuanmin delayed no further. With the day's soldier along for the trip, he and Shushian headed out of the valley. Neither of them feared the forest's mist, and the deceased soldier had no reason to fear it either. Soon they left Mount Boji and followed its base southward toward the village under the cover of night. While the village had been thick with miasma, it was clear and bright outside. For once, there was no rain or snow, just a silver crescent moon overhanging the mountain. It cast a frost-like glow on the path. Now that Shushian was able to walk properly, his steps were light and steady, unhurried and silent, quite unlike his usual temperament, but somewhat similar to Xuanmin's. His thin black robes fluttered in the night wind as they rounded the mountain path, occasionally brushing against the roadside grass. The side of him facing the moon was outlined in silver, tall and straight, while his other half melted into the darkness with his robes. As Shushan walked the mountain path with Xuan Min, they looked like a pair of underworld envoys, one in black and the other in white. It sent chills down the soldier's spine. By the time they reached the halfway point, the dawn bell and drum from Qingping County had already begun to sound, echoing outward from the city walls. On the southern side of the mountain, roosters crowed and dogs barked in response. When they arrived at the village marker, most of the villagers were already awake, their murmurs faintly audible. Shushan and Xuanmin were escorting a resentful ghost, albeit a fragmented, disoriented one, which would probably frighten the villagers. To avoid delays, Shushan cast an illusion over all three of them before entering the village, making them invisible and inaudible to humans and animals alike. "Which way to your home?" Shushan asked. The soldier pointed deep into the village. "Follow this path straight ahead. There's a pond. Walk around it, and it's right there." "Let's go then." Just as Shushan spoke, a faint, eerie sigh echoed from nearby. The sound was abrupt and unsettling in the village's lingering darkness. Almost immediately, someone in the village screamed. The murmur of voices grew louder, tinged with panic. A dog began barking wildly, setting off more baying in a chain reaction. The sound wasn't unfamiliar to Shushan at all. He raised his head and scoffed. What great timing. The villagers' voices continued, buzzing like a stirred hornet's nest. A few sharper cries stood out. "The ghost bird! The ghost bird is here! Why would it come to our village? Did someone bring bad luck? We're doomed! We're doomed! Probably not doomed, but something terrible is coming." The so-called ghost bird was the black bird often perched on Mount Boji, the one that had likely been raised by Xuan Min. After years in the thick mountains and in the mountain's thick mist, its cries were uniquely unsettling, earning it a demonic reputation among the villagers. To them, the bird was a winged harbinger of doom. If it circled a few times overhead, they were sure the entire village would be cursed. Another long sigh echoed, making Shushan's eye twitch. While others might have found it eerie, it evoked something else for him. After all, during his earlier activities, its sigh had woven through the mist, harmonizing with his own panting. Awkward. And that's not just me saying it. It literally says awkward. Yeah, it's right here. Awkward. Another haunted village. Lovely. Xuanmin has terrible taste in pets. I think it's pretty funny. Like, it's a smart crow. It just has a quirk. Just hearing it made his temples throb, his jaw clench, and his fingers itch. To strangle the bird or to grab someone and bite them. Unfortunately, the bird seemed almost supernatural. It flew around the village a couple of times, then somehow spotted their hidden group and dove straight toward them. It was a good thing they hadn't yet reached the center of the village, or the chaos would have been unbearable. Without a hint of tact, the bird looped around the trio before perching nearby on Xuanmin's shoulder. It let out a soft squeak as if coquettishly greeting him. This, of course, made the villagers scream even louder. "Look! The ghost bird! It's hovering in midair!" "Right? Like it's perched on something invisible. What's it standing on?" If I had a nickel for every Danme I've read with quirky pet birds, I'd have 2 nickels. The illusion had been meant to grant them quiet entry, but thanks to this idiot bird, they might as well have paraded through town. The entire village was staring in their direction, expressions wary. If not for the fear of provoking the so-called ghost bird, they might have already charged at them with brooms and rakes. And the bird wasn't done. Seemingly unafraid of humans, it tilted its head curiously at the trembling villagers before adding another extended squawk. The cry wavered dramatically, the very picture of provocation. The sound grated on Shushian's nerves, and he poked the bird's owner, encouraging him to slap a silencing talisman on the wretched creature. Schwannman's pet is unruly. The most unruly is his dragon. Yeah. It's perched on Schwannman. It is perched on Schwannman. The black bird seemed to have a natural aversion to Shushian. Its beady eyes glared at the dragon, who'd whispered into its master's ear, and its feathers puffed up as it stretched its neck to peck him. That the one from QJJ? I haven't read that one yet. I was thinking of Stars of Chaos. That's funny. Shushian, just as itching for a fight, pinched its yellow beak between 2 fingers and pulled it closer. In my free time, I love catching birds to roast, he said darkly. Out here in the wilderness, I'm not picky. Raw or cooked, plucked or unplucked, I'll eat anything. Faced with this life-threatening intimidation, the bird froze like a wooden chicken. After a long pause, it carefully extracted its beak from Shushian's grip, then turned its watery eyes toward Schwanmin. Seeing that the feathered pest was a tattletale, Shushian also looked at Schwanmin expectantly. That a mighty dragon would stoop to bickering with a bird was truly a talent in itself. It seemed that the name Shushian, meaning idol, was well earned. Schwanmin hadn't expected to be caught in the crossfire. At a loss for words, he simply sighed. Shushian wasn't actually trying to compete with the bird. He'd used it as an excuse to ease the strange tension between him and Schwanmin. After all, Schwanmin had turned even more reticent than usual and hadn't spoken a word the entire journey. To Shushian's surprise, before he could glare at Schwanmin for long, the monk glanced at Shushian and covered his eyes with one hand. Schwanmin's palm wasn't soft. His lean fingers pressed against Shushian's brow and nose bridge. Somehow, though he was sweating profusely all night under the dragon saliva's influence, his hand remained dry and clean. It carried the faint scent of wild grass and trees, light and warm. Shushian felt like he'd dug his own grave. He'd meant to dispel the awkwardness, but Schwanmin's confusing gesture only made things stranger. Haha, so I could potentially have 3 nickels. I can't remember if the SPL bird had a name. It belonged to one of the Shens, I think, but it liked insulting everyone. Kind of funny. Back when Shushian had been a paper figure, Schwanmin had often covered Shushian's eyes, probably to stop him from seeing unsightly things. In this form, the gesture carried a different weight. Shushian didn't hear Schwanmin coax or scold the bird, but after a moment, it flapped its wings twice and settled down. Locked obediently beneath the darkness of Schwanmin's palm, Shushian blinked once, his lashes brushing against the monk's fingers. Schwanmin's fingertips twitched. He withdrew his hand, still avoiding Shushian's gaze. Perhaps it truly was out of sight, out of mind. Enough. Let's go, Schwanmin said calmly. The blackbird behaved, clinging silently to Schwanmin's shoulder. Every once in a while it cast a fearful glance at Shushian before it darted its head away as if it had remembered its place. Xuanmin seemed to have done something else to it, for when they boldly walked into the village with the bird in tow, the villagers' gazes no longer followed them. Where did that ghost bird go? It vanished! Right, it was just there. The villagers' murmurs faded behind them. The bird's antics had one benefit. Most early risers had gathered at the village entrance, leaving the deeper areas quiet and empty. Following the soldiers' directions, they reached the pond and crossed a simple, narrow bridge. A few steps in, they heard voices below the bridge. Without pausing, Shushian looked down and saw two women kneeling on the stone steps, washing clothes while chatting. Ah, poor old Uncle Lee on the West End passed away yesterday, sighed the woman in maroon winter clothes. They said he hid a rope and hung himself by the bed. He was clutching a red embroidered jacket when he died. Old Lee? Hadn't he been senile for 5 or 6 years? How'd he manage to find a rope? That's harsh. The maroon-clad woman shook her head. After Aunt Lee fell ill and passed years ago, their second sons and the others, feeling the old man couldn't bear it, lied to him. They took advantage of his dementia to say she'd gone to the county for treatment. You've heard about that, right? I have. They said old Lee couldn't even recall conversations from 2 days ago, right? Every day he'd ask, Where's your mother? Right? Well, 2 days ago, he seemed to regain some clarity and realized his sons had lied, that his wife was long gone. The woman sighed. Previously, he might have been senile, but he could still keep himself going. But now he had no hope left, so he took his life when no one was watching. Ah, some things are better left unknown. As the women talked, Shushan's group crossed the bridge. The soldier froze in midair for a few seconds, hovering silently before he caught up. We're here. His voice was hesitant as he pointed to a modest earthen house by the road. There were it had 3 rooms in total, 2 side by side, and a smaller one that served as a kitchen. Why is bullying your significant other's pet so prevalent in Chinese media? Good question. And yes, that did escalate rather quickly, Annika. Just as he spoke, one of the doors opened. Out stepped a plainly dressed woman with her hair pinned up, holding a colorful knotted cord with a dried turtle shell strung on it. After adjusting the knot, she stood on tiptoe to hang it on a nail by the door. She touched this shell and glanced outside. For a moment, Shushian thought she had seen them, but her gaze skimmed past where they stood before she turned toward the village entrance, then retreated into the kitchen. Let's go over, Shushian said. When no reply came, he turned to find the soldier's blurred face streaked with tears. As if sleepwalking, he followed them to the door but didn't enter the kitchen. Instead, he drifted to the colorful cord and seemed to want to touch the turtle shell, but with no hands, he could only stare. Then he turned toward the woman by the hearth. What's the meaning of the cord? Shushian asked. After a long pause, the soldier suppressed a sob and answered, Turtles symbolize return. It's a local custom. If someone leaves and doesn't come back, families hang these. They were replaced monthly, woven from spring to winter. The soldier gazed longingly at the woman, enveloped in the kitchen's warmth. Finally, he murmured, I've changed my mind. Don't let her see the tag. After so many years apart, he couldn't get enough of her. He seemed reluctant when he looked at Shushian and Xuanmin. Could you bury it outside the house instead? I knew that's where it was going. Studying his tear-streaked face, Shushian nodded. Sure. You won't regret it? Once we bury it, we're leaving for good. If you change your mind later, no one can help you. I'll watch over her and my parents from here, guarding the door." The soldier's voice was low. "Without the tag, they can keep hoping." A veteran of countless battles, tough and unyielding, he'd shed blood and sweat, but few tears. Now his face twisted into an ugly shape as he bit back sobs. After a long silence, he gathered himself and spoke to Xuan Min. "I've heard of a medicine, one that lets you pledge your next life in advance. If I took it in my state, would it still work?" Xuanmin hesitated, but before he could answer, Shushian clicked his tongue. "Why are you mortals so obsessed with tying your next life, or this one after, to someone else? I've heard this before. Last time, it was also a soldier who rambled all night asking if such miracles existed. Anything involving life and death is sinister, all right. The cost is unbearable. There are no free blessings." "Not necessarily," the soldier said earnestly, surprising Shushan. "When I was young, Uncle Chu from our village said his hometown had a divine medicine. If planted on someone, it could pledge their next life and even bear the other's misfortunes." At Shushian's indifference, he added, "Uncle Chu is from Langshou, and that region produces strange things, so maybe it's real?" "Stop dreaming. It's useless," Shushian said bluntly. The soldier deflated and bowed his head. "I know. I was just wondering." "Wait." Shushian frowned and hissed in surprise. That sounded familiar. "Where did you say that person was from?" "Oh, it's our sorcerer!" Soldier's voice was muffled, some words unclear. Shushian's eyes narrowed as he repeated what he'd made out. "Uncle Chu. Langshou's Mount Xia. Langshou. Mount Xia. A divine medicine that could bear another's misfortune." Langshou again, right? Two such coincidences were much too much. Shushian's gaze flicked to Xuanmin's neck, then to his eyes. "Let's find that man," Shushian said, turning his face away. Learning more about the divine medicine might help unravel the mystery of Xuanmin's life-sharing spider. That's what it's called. I was like, I know it's a spider. It has to do with life. I couldn't remember the exact word. Without delay, they honored the soldier's request, quietly buried the tag outside the house before heading deeper into the village to find this Uncle Chu. Meanwhile, on the mountain path not far from the village, a long procession had halted. It was the group from the Court of Imperial Sacrifices, having circled back. In the lead were the young man and woman still, the chief ritualist and chief diviner. Adjusting his mask, the chief ritualist glanced at the chief diviner, who was recasting her divination. "Well, did that man use another illusion, or has he moved overnight?" One couldn't divine the same matter twice in a day, so their knowledge was still based on last night's results. After detouring to another mountain, they sensed something amiss and returned to Mount Boji. This time, the chief diviner remained silent for so long that the chief ritualist grew uneasy. That man was indeed on Mount Boji. There's no mistake this time, no interference, but the chief diviner hesitated. "He's dead." "Dead?" The chief ritualist's voice rose in surprise. "But that's not what puzzles me most." "What else?" "Remember when I mentioned someone who might be the state preceptor?" "Of course, but surely that's a coincidence." "Unfortunately, my divination shows he was also in that mountain valley and left not long ago." The side quest spawned a side quest, right? One coincidence was plausible. Two were harder to dismiss. The chief ritualist stiffened. It couldn't really be him. Where is he now? The chief diviner pointed south. In the dim dawn light, they could see a village quietly nestled there. In that village. Through the eye holes of their masks, they exchanged a glance. The chief diviner briskly took paper and brush from her saddlebag, moistened the ink, and penned a brief letter. Meanwhile, the chief ritualist whistled, summoning a pigeon. The letter was addressed to the state preceptor, stamped with the chief diviner's seal, and sent to Famen Temple via pigeon. Even with this letter, we should verify things in person. This concerns the state preceptor. We can't afford carelessness, the chief ritualist spoke. The chief diviner nodded. Though hastily written, the letter wasn't rash. The chief diviner never mentioned the person resembling the state preceptor, since doing so would border on disrespect. No one in the court of imperial sacrifices would have dared be so presumptuous. In their minds, the state preceptor was perpetually solemn. His very presence exuded an untouchable, unapproachable aura. Even though the chief diviner, chief ritualist, and others had been brought to the temple by him as children, he remained lofty and infallible all these years later. Your letter, the chief ritualist tugged his reins, hesitating before he left. The chief diviner didn't need him to finish. I'm not that foolish. I only mentioned that the person we were ordered to find is dead. If the pigeon encounters no delay, it should reach Famen Temple by tomorrow night. The day after, at least. The state preceptor will arrange matters upon reading it. Until then, we act as circumstances dictate. Their abilities were limited, so messenger pigeons were their only option. On the other hand, the state preceptor could reply with a message in a single instantaneous flame. They'd know whether he was still at Famen Temple in 2 days. In truth, once we enter the village and meet that person, we'll have our answer, the chief ritualist murmured. No one can impersonate the state preceptor. While the temple members lived and trained together, the state preceptor preferred solitude, residing year-round in Tianji Institute. Strictly speaking, they weren't his true disciples, but they were the ones who saw him most often. From childhood to adulthood, they'd grown intimately familiar with his mannerisms and aura. Without any exaggeration, these two could instantly spot him in a crowd, even if he were masked and disguised among hundreds or thousands of people dressed the same way. The letter was a formality to cover their bases for their own peace of mind. They exchanged a glance and urged their horses forward without delay. In a clatter of hoofbeats, the procession rode toward the small village south of the mountain. Things about to get messy. Deep within the village, a solitary hut rested beneath the branches of an old loquat tree. From its low eaves hung 2 heavy strings of garlic and vibrant red peppers, strung together with an intricately braided hemp rope. The design of the braid seemed purposeful. The string hadn't been done only for drying. Up close, the rope carried a pungent, smoky odor. This was the home of the soldier's Uncle Chu. Shu Xian walked to the door but didn't knock right away. Instead, he wrinkled his nose and leaned in to sniff the ropes. It's blood. Old blood. Shu Xian covered his face with his sleeve. As always, Xuan Min found such things disgusting. He reached out and tugged the nosy dragon away from the hemp rope, as if another moment near it would contaminate Shu Xian with the smell. The two remained beneath their illusion and thus invisible and inaudible to most. But right as Xuanmin pulled Shu Xian away, a man in a thick coat passed by Uncle Chu's house, leading a child that barely reached his waist. The child glanced curiously at the hut, only for the man to steer him away as if trying to avoid some plague. How many times must I tell you? Stop loitering here whenever you can, the man scolded. Oh, the child said. He obediently ducked his head and followed the man, but couldn't resist peeking backward. Soon enough, a mother and child who had been watching the commotion at the village entrance earlier passed by the front of the house. The woman nodded a greeting to the approaching father and son, then, like him, she steered her child a few paces away from Uncle Chu's hut. Seems this Uncle Chu isn't too popular, Shushian muttered. He'd planned to knock once the passerbys left, but just then the hut's cracked wooden door creaked open. A thin-lipped old man peered out, squinting as he scanned the area before fixing his milky, unfocused eyes where Shushian and Chuanmin stood. Though his vision seemed poor, Shushian sensed he could see, or at least feel, them. Who's there? What you doing just standing by the door? I'm gonna shut it if you don't come in. The old man shouted, his speech slurred. He was probably a little hard of hearing himself because his voice was booming, loud enough to reach the ears of the two parents making a detour. Quick, let's go. Old Chu's about to have one of his fits, the man murmured, dragging his child away. The mother did the same with hers. In moments, the area around the house was deserted. That's not ominous at all. Right, Truffle? Blood-soaked rope. I'm sure it adds great flavor to the garlic and hot peppers. Bah! Old Chu was clearly an ill-tempered man. He held the door for a moment, but when no one came in, he grumbled and moved to shut it. Just before it closed, Shushian stopped it with a hand. Pardon us. We're seeking shelter from the wind. Hey, kids, get off my lawn! Right? Old Chu was a little wary. Human or ghost? Without waiting for an answer, he continued loudly. Nope, can't be a ghost. My protective charms are right there. Even ghost wouldn't dare. Who are you? What do you want? To ask you something. Old Chu is still holding the door, barring them from entry. What? Shushian wasn't too concerned about entering the house. It was rather small, and he and Xuanmin would have to stoop to get inside. If he could get his answers at the door, it would save them the trouble of hunching over. So, I heard you're from around Mount Xia in Langshou. Old Chu nodded. That's right. What of it? Earlier, we escorted a young man home. He mentioned hearing from you that Mount Xia had many extraordinary medicines. The old man listened curiously, then stroked his chin for a while. Eventually, he released the door. Come inside first. Standing's tiresome. My legs can't take it. Old Chu, it appeared, was a long-time recluse. His house was in shambles, and the air within was sour, like it hadn't been aired out in ages. As if the unpleasant staleness wasn't bad enough, the pungent odor of garlic was also mixed in. He let go, and as the door swung open, the indescribable stench slammed right into Shushian's nose. Of course, invisibility doesn't work on the blind dude. Well, I mean, your senses do adapt, so it makes sense. Maybe we should just talk outside. Grimacing, he held his breath, ducked inside, and yanked Xuanmin in after him. I'm surprised Xuanmin hasn't shot off like a cleansing talisman at this point. While old Chu fumbled for a seat, Shushian grabbed Xuanmin's sleeve, pressing it to his nose for a deep sniff. Much better. Xuanmin stared at Shushian, but he didn't tell him to stop. Progress. Old Man Shu wasn't exactly the hospitable type. He didn't invite the two to sit, and in truth, there weren't many places in his house where one could sit. What kind of miracle medicine are you asking about? He settled into a chair padded with thick cloth, squinting as he spoke. Langshou has plenty of caterpillar fungus. It's not unusual to find extraordinary remedies there. Are there any that can prolong life or alter fate? Shushian prodded. Old Man Chu gave them a sidelong glance, and after a long pause, said more. Probably only fire would work. There are rumors of such medicines, but they aren't the same. Supposedly two types, extremely similar in appearance, but with opposite effects. One can extend life, while the other can shorten it. Even whispers that one of them can bind people for 3 lifetimes, though no one knows which one. In any case, someone like me would never have the fortune to witness it. Whether it's true or not is all hearsay. Shushan pressed on. Do you know where that kind of medicine would grow? Well, Manchu didn't disappoint. He had a specific location. Bai Chong Cave! Shushan nodded. That'll do. Do the locals all know where Bai Chong Cave is? If they do, we can ask again once we reach Mount Xia. Not a chance, Old Manchu waved his hand dismissively. If you actually go asking around, I guarantee hardly anyone will be able to tell you. Shushan frowned. Why? You have no idea how venomous the insects in the area are. Just hearing the name Bai Chong Cave would be enough to scare the life out of them. Besides, who would bother with such believe it or not rumors? Old Manchu said. The only reason I know is because my ancestors were witch doctors who loved dabbling in those things. To be honest, you've asked the right person. Probably the only one who can point you in the right direction. He raised his hand and traced a path on his other palm with his index finger. Once you reach Mount Xia, go that way. Go this way. Circle around to the southwestern mountain pass. There are 3 peaks there. One of the mountain tops has a twisted cliff. Bai Chong Cave is somewhere nearby. As for whether you need to jump off the cliff or what, I'm not sure. If you've got the luck, try every method. Luck? That was one thing Shushan had in abundance. He scoffed to himself, thinking it really wasn't much trouble. At worst, he could climb the entire cliffside. It wouldn't be too difficult for him and Xuanmin. Truth be told, if the rumors had just been about medicine, Shushan wouldn't have believed it so easily. But because it was Bai Chong Cave, 100 Insect Cave, they might have hit the mark. After all, the thing that had afflicted Xuanmin was called the life-sharing spider. Wasn't that related to insects? Prolonging or altering one's fate with one insect or arachnid was patently ridiculous. However, if those creatures were used to cultivate a gyu, then enhanced through some kind of talisman array or dark arts, it might have some effect. So a gyu, if you need a reminder, is created by breeding multiple poisonous insects in a jar where they consume each other to produce a powerful mutant specimen. Can be used as a base for dark arts. Usually it's to control another person. In a lot of cultivation novels, it's either to poison or to control. Think like the blood gyu in Scumvillain. It's not an insect like is common, but it kind of has the effect of a gyu. The blood mites. Think about it like that. The only thing was, such creations usually only benefited one party, while the others afflicted by the creation suffered immensely. Now that they had a location, the two didn't linger. Before they departed, Shushan glanced over the age-decaying furnishings in the room, tossed a gold bead into a cloth bag hanging beside the door as payment for the information. Old Manchu was eccentric, but not unpleasant. He didn't ask what Shushan and Xuanmin intended to do, nor did he see them off when they bade farewell. Nonetheless, just as Shushan pulled open the wooden door and went to step outside, Old Manchu murmured something else. Still, I'd advise you. Even if you find that thing, it's best not to use it. My ancestors said that there was a lovesick fool who wanted to extend his life or bind his next lifetime. Can't quite remember. Either way, he suffered nothing but misery, living a life worse than death. Who knows what he was thinking? The words tumbled out in a jumble, as if he were sleep-talking. After speaking, he chuckled to himself. Then again, I've said this to many people, and no one believes me. They all say I'm mad. Take it as you've heard it. Go on, go on. I'll have another nap. Shushian replied nonchalantly, waving at Old Man Shu. I'm not that bored. Besides, if I extended my life any further, wouldn't that be overkill? He nudged Shuan Min out the door. With their information in hand, the two delayed no further. They followed the intersecting village paths toward the exit. They passed the pond on their way out. Shushian inadvertently glanced into the distance and saw the wounded soldier standing rigidly in front of the door, as if prepared to remain there until his hair turned white in 60 years. Whether it was the lovesick fool Old Man Shu had mentioned, or the wounded soldier weeping in anguish, Shushian had never felt such intense emotions. The motivation behind their actions were something he struggled to empath, empathize with. There we go. Like Shushian had mentioned, the wounded soldier, roughly 60 or 70 years ago, he'd encountered a different soldier in a large desert far to the north. Shushian had gone there to bring rain in accordance with the natural order. When he arrived, he saw fierce winds whipping up sandstorms, with countless bones littering the ground. Burnt-out chariots, tattered battle flags, and rusted, broken armor stretched for miles. That soldier had been sitting alone by a chariot, one leg bent, his foot propped on an upturned wheel, his head resting on his hand, as he stared at a tattered flag beside him. With one glance, Shushian knew he was a wandering ghost that had been dead for almost a year. The others had long since moved on. Only this one lingered, for reasons unknown. Shushian was languid by nature and not particularly compassionate. He'd intended to ignore the ghost and leave after bringing the rain, but then the lonely spirit had called out to him. The ghost, having wandered for so long, had been disoriented. He rambled away, not caring who Shushian was, spilling his thoughts like scattered beans. Like the wounded soldier, the ghost's words had been disjointed and hard to follow. So there's a picture, but we literally have 1.5 pages, so I'm gonna read this and then I'll show you the picture at the end. Shushian let his mood dictate his actions. That day, perhaps because he was moved by the sight of bones strewn across the wilderness, his patience had been a little better than usual. He allowed the ghost to go on for a long time. The soldier's chatter boiled down to two things. If only we had won this battle, and I don't dare move on. You're not afraid of death, so why fear reincarnation? Shushian asked. The ghost's incoherent musings continued for a while longer before Shushian had eked out an understanding. The ghost was afraid that once he moved on, he'd have to live his next life, but his wife was still in this lifetime. He feared that leaving meant he'd never see her again. Staying won't give you that chance either, Shushian said. You're bound here. You can't leave. The ghost gave him a mournful look. With much gesturing, he explained further. It wouldn't be so painful if he could remember to look for her in his next life. If they were fated to be together, it'd be best for them to meet in childhood, for him to watch her grow from a little girl into a young woman, and then marry her. There was no need for the life and death drama of operas. Just an ordinary, peaceful life would do. And preferably, no more wars. Shushian, looking at the bones scattered across the land, listened to the ghost's sentimental monologue. Surprisingly, he didn't find it annoying. As he left, he casually tossed the ghost a long cord. What's the rope for? I'm already dead. I don't need to hang myself, the ghost said woodenly. Just wrap it around your left wrist and mark yourself, Shushian retorted. Didn't you say you wanted to find her in your next life? Though it won't help you remember those trivial things, having a mark might make it more obvious. Maybe if your longing is strong enough, you'll really find her. The ghost had lingered for so long solely due to this small wish. Now that it had been resolved, he didn't stay any longer. When Shushian departed, the ghost also went on his way. Seeing the wounded soldier standing vigil had reminded Shushian of that ghost. Many years had passed, and he still couldn't understand those types of lingering emotions after death. However, as his old memories surfaced, Shushan subconsciously peeked at Xuanmin. Xuanmin, hardly a step ahead, noticed Shushian's pause. What? Shushian snapped out of his thoughts and realized his gaze had settled on Xuanmin's shoulders and back. Oh, he said, looking away. Nothing, just remembered a passerby. A passerby. Xuanmin looked toward the pond, then at Shushian. But Shushian's attention had already shifted to the road ahead. Let's go. We're almost out. Wait, someone's there. They had just passed the village boundary stone and dispelled the concealment spell. They would be on the mountain path once they rounded the bend, but before Shushian had finished speaking, he'd spotted a long, pale procession standing on the path ahead. Whose funeral has such a grand procession? Shushian muttered, just as he noticed flags beside the carriages in the procession, bearing two characters, Tai Chang. It was the court of imperial sacrifices. That is where we're stopping tonight, but don't go yet. We still have this really cool picture. Like, I mean, it's sad. But it's a really cool picture. While you're looking at the picture, though, just a reminder that tomorrow, next week, we will be streaming Monday, and then there will be a card opening stream that's already been filmed on Thursday. Both of those at the usual time. So, we will do that next week. But yeah. No, it's a really cool picture, but also just a really sad one. But yeah. And of course, we ended on a cliffhanger because why wouldn't we? So I will see you all Monday. Esper Lady, I hope you enjoy the beginning part that you ended up missing. But yes, have a good night, everybody. And to everyone watching later, I hope you enjoyed as well. Bye-bye. See you Monday, friends.